Well, you'll have to find out later in the video what I made a mistake with, but it might be this bit, and it's not the issue I had before, it's not the issue Paul had before, because all those holes were lined up, but I'll show you what it was later on. Right, camera's rolling. Right, so hi everyone and welcome to the channel. Today is a slightly different video. Behind me you can see my Peabee, and today it's a bit of a maintenance day. I've been putting this off for a while. It's nearly at 150 hours, so it is due a piston change. As you may have seen from the thumbnail, there is a day where I need to take the piston off. So it's going to be a lot of maintenance. What I'm going to try and do is, rather than do time lapses, I'm going to try and stop at intervals and explain what's going on. So, but here's a brief update of what is going to need to be happening. So I am going to be changing the piston, which involves taking all the head off, the main cylinder, the cylinder's got to come off, which means replacing all the gaskets. I am going to be changing the reed valves because they're due as well, so I've got a new set of those, which means again all the gaskets are going to need to be changed on that. The rubber grommet on the airbox is going to get changed as well. In addition to that, I am going to be rebuilding the carburetor, and on top of that as well, I've got one of my rivets that's leaking. Sorry, not leaking. One of the rivets has now started to come a bit loose on the silencer. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to be changing the wadding inside of the silencer as well, and a good check on that. So yeah, the engine's coming apart. So let's see how it goes on for today. So yeah, I will give you an update as I'm getting involved with this. I've taken the wing off already, so Bob and James, thank you very much for helping me get the wing off earlier. It's a little bit windy here today, so it's not a flyable day, but it is a day where I can crack on and rip the engine apart and make it all better, and put new bits on it and all spangly and shiny and ready for the next flight. So let's crack on. A lot of maintenance today. I may not get it all done on this event, but hopefully it will be done by the completion of this video. So join you as I rip the aircraft engine apart. That is the silencer and the wadding material. Now these are stainless steel, and the rivets are basically sealed at the back, so they're not like normal tucker pops. They've actually got a sealing element at the back of it to stop gas escaping, and then there's a high temperature silicone that goes around the top of this. But what can happen over time is the rivets can become loose because they go through heat cycles. Exhausts obviously get very hot, and so they just need basically replacing. But also at this time, the wadding needs replacing. And as you'll probably see on the screen at the moment, the replacement wadding I've already got, so that's going to get wrapped up inside here, and then I'll reassemble the exhaust with new rivets and new silicone. And I'm really pleased actually that the stem baffling the central tube of the silencer hasn't actually broken down. I'm really pleased about that. So I had to refit it onto the exhaust to pull the middle out of this. So anyway, I'm going to reassemble the wadding and get back on, and that should be silencer rebuilt, wadding rebuilt, and rivets replaced. So on with the next job. There we go, all rebuilt. However, some things I did forget to mention at the beginning is these stainless steel rivets are an absolute nightmare to get out. So I did use an angle grinder this time, which is what I ended up using last time. I went through about 3 drill bits last time as well, trying to get it out, but only 1 drill bit this time, didn't break it. And the other thing to remember is that when you rebuild it, there's many videos on how to do this, but you've got to remember that alignment has to match the output of the exhaust, because when you rebuild it, if you've got it in the wrong angle, it will point in the wrong direction and the flow won't be right. So just remember that when you rebuild it. But I say I'll link to some other videos for a lot of these jobs. I'm not looking to teach you how to do it on this. I'm just taking you through the journey of what I've got to do to keep my aircraft serviceable in the air. And so 150 hours, it's about the right time to do everything of what I'm doing now. So I'm just doing it in a one-stop shop. It just happened to be that this was leaking. However, I have spent a lot of time trying to not get the high temperature silicone all over my fingers and all over my hands, and that's over on a rag on the floor down there. As you can hear, it's quite windy, so I'm going to crack on with the next job. Hopefully you're enjoying the rebuild as I go along. with a bit of a clean. That looks all right. I'm not going to clean it because it's getting changed. Due a change. I was pleased though that the piston rings were actually quite fluid and did flow, but I say it's definitely time for a new piston. If you don't know how to measure for your new piston, there are other videos online. I'm not going to show you how I did it before because I've already had this cylinder off, the cylinder head off to measure the cylinder bore to get the new piston size. So I've already had my new piston here already, waiting for this opportunity to do it. As you'll see, I've cleaned out the decompressor port. That is a very fundamental part of this system for starting it. People tend to struggle, find that engines difficult to start, and a lot of the time it's because that decompressor port is blocked and it doesn't allow the ease of turning the engine over. So that's quite key. And I say I've looked inside it. I can still see the honing holes of the bore, so that's still good to see. No other scrapes or scratches inside. I am going to change the lower gasket because that is peeled away slightly, and I believe it was a 0.5 last time, so I'll be replacing it with a 0.5 this time. And then there's other videos, I won't be doing it on this one, but there are other things where you can do the squish band just to make sure you've got the right height at the top of it. So hopefully that's been useful for an update. I'm going to crack on with it now and get more of it done. But so I generally think this is the first time I generally think it's the first time that the exhaust has been off since I fitted it 5 hours after I got it. So that exhaust has been on there for 145 hours. So I'm not going to say anything because people know what happens with these exhausts, but I've been looking after it. It does need a bit more of WD-40, but I'm really pleased that exhaust has lasted so long. So cracking on with the maintenance and get it back up to hopefully get the carburetor off to rebuild that next. So on with rebuilding or changing the cylinder, on with changing the piston so I can then rebuild the cylinder and put the cylinder head back on and get it ready for the carburetor build. Pistons back in, gudgeon pin and roller bearing have all been heavily lubricated because it's the first chance they're going to get any oil, so I may as well just slap it all on. So that's gone all through the middle of this, and the end clips, which are that one clip that will go bing and it'll disappear, and then you can't go any further with the building. That is nicely seated in the end. So I'm really pleased with where I've got to at the minute. I haven't dropped anything. I may have been forewarning there, but hopefully it won't be. I haven't dropped anything down into the main crankcase, which is my biggest worry with all of this at the moment, is that I'm going to drop something down there. So at the moment I'm happy. I've cleaned up the cylinder. I've cleaned up the base of the cylinder. I've put the gasket on there with some high temp, so it's a very thin layer of high temp gasket. So I've got the piston back in, the gudgeon pin and roller bearings have all been checked. I've checked the play on the inner part of the engine as well, and I'm happy with that it's not excessive or anything that I would accept for anything greater than what it is at the moment. It's fine, basically is what I'm trying to say. Everything's back together again now, and everything has been heavily lubricated because this is the first chance it's ever going to see any oil before the engine turns over for the first time. So I've got the two-stroke oil, I've lubricated everything before it's gone back together again, and now I'm happy that it is together. Now there is one obviously key point. As you'll see on the screen, there is an arrow on the piston. It can only be fitted in one direction. Well, you can fit it in a different orientation, but that arrow has to point towards where the exhaust goes because that's the way it's aligned to allow the gases to flow around the piston. So that's where I'm at the moment. The cylinder has been cleaned, the bottom of the cylinder has been cleaned, and I'm happy that that gasket that I fit to the bottom is seated correctly. All the surfaces have been cleaned, this surface has been cleaned, it's nice and shiny there, so I'm happy that I'm now going to put the cylinder back on the piston, ensuring that all the piston rings are seated correctly before it goes on, and that's always been a problem with some engines, is getting those piston rings aligned correctly. So now for the difficult bit, and hopefully it'll go back on the cylinder bore will go back around the piston, so that's Right, I didn't really video the reed block going back in because it was literally 4 screws, replaced the reed block petals, which are just a very, very thin sheet. They hold the pressure inside. So there's 2 ways of doing 2-stroke engines, but this is a reed block system that holds the pressure in, other than a timing issue with a piston, and that's how the other 2-strokes sort of do it. I think it's more Rotax on that side of things. But anyway, this is the carburetor. You might notice there's a big hole in the bottom of this one, in the butterfly disc, and that was one of the modifications. If you haven't seen that video, there'll be a link up here in the corner, so I'm going to leave that in for this time. I may take it out and try a different modification to it later on, but for the time being I know it works, but all I need to do is change one thing at a time. I rebuild it rather than change the settings inside, all the membranes. They're well overdue changing, just haven't flown the aircraft that much or been able to get out here to do the maintenance. So anyway, this is going to be taken apart. I'm not going to show you this being taken apart because there are loads and loads and loads of videos. If you haven't seen any of the Scout Paramotor videos, they've got a whole series on how to rebuild these engines. That's not how I've learned from other professionals, etc. And there is also a course that I did with the UK Vittorazi dealer, and I will show the link to that up there in the corner. So I'm going to rebuild this, hopefully get it back to spec. Well, not hopefully, I will get it back to spec, apart from my my butterfly mod, and I say I'll update whether there are any issues. But other than that, I'm going to rebuild this and get that back on the engine. I really want to try and see if this engine will start today before I go away, and if it doesn't, then at least I've got a list of bits that I need to go and buy to get it back up and running. So join you in a bit. It's a bit like Blue Peter. Here's one I made earlier. Right, that appears to be everything done. I'm just trying to work out how long it's taken me. Best part of 2 hours to do all that. So the main bit is the carburetor rebuild, which you've got to be precise with. You've got to use the right springs, the right seal kit, etc. Check the pop-off pressure, check the metering lever height. These aren't float bolt carbs, these are pulse bolt carbs, and so I've spent years perfecting a way of trying to tune them, but effectively the factory settings work really, really well. Apologies for the wind. I am straight downwind from the windsock. But we're in a position now where I've rebuilt everything. You'll have seen me using a technique to get the exhaust springs back on. Just a bit of Kevlar cord, but it means that you're not getting metal on metal. The screwdriver I was using has got a plastic sheathing around it as well. Toolbox closing itself, and so that's everything pretty much back together. I haven't changed the brass ring because the brass ring has got loads of life left in it, and so I'm just really happy that everything's gone back together as easily as it has. Dare I say that? I want to try and start it now. I will be starting it out of the aircraft, but I will be having it braced up against a hangar door, a steel door, so that there is no risk to me, and I can easily either kill the fuel or pull the spark plug cap off. So I'm happy that I'm going to be doing this outside the aircraft, because I know there's been some contention about people starting aircraft when they're stood outside of it. So the reed block I took out and unfortunately I orientated it the wrong way round, because there's no keyway in it, so the reed block hole wasn't lining up with the pulse port hole, which means I was only running on prime. It started fine, started third pull I believe. You might have seen it in the video. Did 3 priming pulls and then turned it on, started up, but yeah, because there's no pulse port, it's only running on the prime. Yeah, so felt a little bit silly, but at the end of the day, at least I knew where to look for it, because it had the same symptoms I had before. But you know, the joy of these engines is they're very, very easy to diagnose what's going on with them, and so I knew straight away it was something to do with the fuel feed and the pulse. So took this out, and straight away, so 6 screws and I'm job done. So I'm going to put it all back together again. Let's see if it starts and runs much better now. Let's see if it works now. Clear. Checked. Checked. See if it'll start unprimed. So that's indicating too rich to me. It's bouncing far too much. So I'm going to go and give it a new tune, and I'll hopefully do an outro when I'm all wrapped up. So this pretty much wraps up the video. I've been really pleased with how it's gone back together again. The manuals for how to do this are all online. Nothing I've done today is outside the scope of a basic toolkit. I've literally got like a Halfords toolkit there. Do need a torque wrench, and there's a few gizmos and gadgets you need to rebuild the carburetor. But other than that, everything you need information wise is available online. And as I said, when I've done my 100-hour servicing before, I will provide those same links again. The Vittorazi manuals are very, very good, and they tell you how to do everything, even the frequency you need to tighten the belt. There was a guy that said, as I mentioned earlier, it said the belt was squeaking. It's not the belt that's squeaking, it's just because of the carburetor mod I've done. It runs at a lot lower mixture setting at the bottom end, which causes that squeak. So anyway, I will be looking to change the butterfly disc to see if I can get it more towards the factory setting again. Should hopefully help stabilize it. And if you're interested in any of the 9 maintenance I'm doing, there will be some future videos on what I'm going to be doing with the 9 and the Pellini 303. But anyway, this is wrapping up this video here. I'm really, really pleased with how that's gone today. I do feel a little bit embarrassed, and I've just messaged my friend Paul Batterton. If you haven't seen Paulie B's channel, it'll be up here in the corner or wherever it'll be. And I was thinking when I was rebuilding, make sure you've got all the pulse ports aligned, because you don't want to make that same mistake. And I could not believe that I'd inadvertently on the reed block turned it round, because I saw that there was a channel at the bottom and I thought it pulled it from there and didn't realise there was a hole in the reed block. But I knew the symptoms straight away. Literally took the airbox off, 2 bolts for the carb and 4 bolts for the reed block, spotted it, turned it round, and then as you see, it's literally fired straight up. So I'm happy as Larry. Idling nicely about 2400 RPM. That's the perfect setting for the silent, because if it's any lower than that, it really, really starts to bounce. I don't like it being any lower than that, for me personally. So other than that, I hope you've really enjoyed this video and the little bit of maintenance I'm doing. It might sound like a daunting task, but I've really enjoyed the challenge today, and say 2 to 3 hours, and the job all the little jobs of rebuilding the silencer, rebuilding the carburetor, rebuilding changing the piston, putting everything back together. The one job I have got left to do is I'm going to wait for it to cool and re-torque the head, just to make sure the head is seated, and then before I fly it next time, I'm going to give it a quick re-torque to check it again, and then also check the spark plug for the fuel colour. Other than that, wrap up here. Until next time everybody, see you in the comments and see you in the next video.